A longtime educator in New Mexico is being investigated for disturbing allegations of an inappropriate relationship with a student that dates back 20 years. But on special assignment, News 13's Lizzie Mitri discovered this is not the first time that someone raised a red flag. In fact, the state and the school he was teaching at decades ago could have fired him and taken away his license to teach, but they didn't.
Jake Lee is done staying silent.
You take 20 years to get to this point where you can accept your abuse and come forward.
His story starts at Artesia Intermediate School.
I was in 6th grade when I met Rodney Wright.
Lee was about 11 or 12 years old.
It's shocking to me now that's how old my oldest son is.
He says Wright took a special interest in him over the years. At Artesia Park Junior High School, he says Wright was his 9th grade history teacher. And then in high school, Lee made the varsity football team. Wright was a coach.
When I entered Artesia High School, which you enter in sophomore year there in Artesia, is when the abuse began and then continued through my junior and senior year at Artesia High School.
Roughly between 1999 and 2001, he says. He was a teenager. Now Lee is 38 years old. He wrote this blog last year identifying himself publicly for the first time as a sexual abuse survivor.
It's stolen a lot of moments from me. It's prevented me from, finding true happiness in parts of my life when I should have. And it's just not okay that he did that to me.
Wright didn't respond to our interview requests. Currently, the 52-year-old is not charged with any crimes, but the Artesia Police Department is investigating. And because Wright is still a licensed educator in New Mexico, the Public Education Department, or PED, also launched an investigation. And it turns out this isn't the first time. While Lee didn't report Wright 20 years ago, another student did. We got this PED investigation that lays it all out. It shows the inappropriate behavior Wright admitted to back in 2000 was grounds for getting fired and losing his license to teach in New Mexico. But that never happened. The investigation found Wright sent an email with descriptions of sexual activities to a female Artesia High School student. And the student said it wasn't just through email that Wright verbally made conversation that contained sexual content or made her feel uneasy. A letter from the superintendent at the time, James Phipps, states he was going to fire Wright, but when Wright asked if he could resign instead, he agreed. The superintendent explained he believed once PED got the case, they would revoke his teaching license anyway. But PED also went easy on Wright.
It's just troubling to know that something like that can happen and that someone can stay in education.
This letter from the Education Department describes Wright's behavior as, quote, substantial grounds for disciplinary action, up to and including revocation of licenses. Yet with no explanation as to why, it goes on to state the Director of Professional Licensure, Marilyn Scargall, offered Wright a deal. To continue his teaching career in New Mexico, he only had to see a psychotherapist for at least 5 counseling sessions and have the therapist write a letter stating Wright was unlikely to repeat the behavior that forced him to leave his job in Artesia.
And he's just been able to keep teaching, and not only teaching, advancing his career.
Most recently, Wright worked for Belen Consolidated Schools, getting promotions from Belen High School principal.
The reason why we weren't coming.
To assistant superintendent of academics. His employment came to an end last summer. Here's Superintendent Lawrence Sanchez.
When the Belen Consolidated Schools were made aware by the Public Education Department of concerns about Mr. Wright's licensure, immediate action was taken by the district.
He said he can't specify if Wright was fired or if he resigned. PED has been investigating since Lee filed a complaint 9 months ago. Just yesterday, they told News 13 they notified Wright they are considering revoking his license. And as far as the criminal investigation,
the district attorney and the detectives are still in conference about the next steps.
While Artesia police have not publicly named Wright as the suspect, we know they're looking into Lee's case. And the statute of limitations to prosecute this type of child sex crime makes this decades-old case challenging. But Commander Lindell Smith says,
if that person was caused great mental anguish, then the statute of limitations is adjusted. Basically, that's what we're working with right now, is a complicated set of statutes.
the waiting game has been really, really hard.
Lee is waiting for the outcome in Portland, Oregon, where he lives with his family and teaches the 2nd grade. And even though he left his hometown of Artesia, the memories stick with him. On special assignment, Lizay Mitri, KRQE News 13.
The Education Department said it will not comment on Wright's investigation from 20 years ago to avoid jeopardizing the current open investigation. The former Artesia Public Schools superintendent and the former director of PED's licensure unit also denied our interview requests.